is Nicole Ravelli,
And I'm Carol Barnett.
And I'm Michaela Burdine.
and we are doing a study on preventing unnecessary separation of children and families from the 1990s, in contrast with the issues of children being separated from their families at the border in current time.
Identify the specific social welfare policy and time period addressed in the video. In the 1990s, President Clinton enacted the Illegal Immigration Reform and Responsibility Act. This act was the first of three laws that strengthened the enforcement arm of the Immigration and Naturalization of the Service that contains two provisions that increases deportations. In 1996, the law increased detention and removal of non-citizens. It expanded the offenses for the non-citizens to be deported. They increased the categories that could deport them. Previously, it was just murder and drug trafficking, and now it's to any crime of violence that carries a prison sentence of a year or more. They did away with the judicial review for all immigrants of deportation.
In the current time, there's a zero tolerance in family separation policy, which is where the government agencies manage the unaccompanied migrant children in asylum seeking. In March of 2017, they ran a pilot study on the zero tolerance in family separation policies in El Paso, Texas, which implemented a policy of separating children from their parents at the border. The goal was to deter mothers from making the arduous journey with their children from Central America to the U.S. border. Migrants revealed that federal prosecutors were aggressive in criminally charging any adult who entered the United States without documentation. Parents with young children were not exempt from being charged. Recently, the Trump administration made a series of policy and procedural changes that affirmed its parent-child separation intent. Parents who were seeking asylum had to sign a form that gave them two options. One, voluntarily leave the United States with their children, or two, be deported leaving their children behind. Trump administration intentionally denied bonds to some parents who have separated from their children. Immigrants who are denied bail do have the right to appeal, but the appeal process is very lengthy.
In the mid-1990s, the U.S. enacted a series of laws that made it easier to deport non-citizens. In the year 2000, 850,000 immigrants entered the United States. When combined with illegal and legal immigrants from previous years, the estimated foreign-born population of the U.S. crossing the threshold of 25 million individuals, more than ever in the nation's history.
There are now at least 2,800 children that have been separated from their parents when crossing the border between October 1st, 2017 and May 31st of 2018. The Trump administration has been suggesting migrant families aren't really families, and if they are families, they aren't worthy families. The government uses children as bait or hostages so that the authorities can criminalize, prosecute, detain, and deport immigrant parents and guardians when they try to reunify with their children. On June 20th of 2018, President Trump signed an executive order that ended the policy of separating families at the border because of the public, the politicians, businesses, and religious groups that put pressure on him. Families who are stopped at the border are placed in settings identical to jails. Families are not allowed to leave the detention facilities unless they are granted bail. Some reports show bright lights are kept on during the night, which keep children awake all night, and they can be disciplined if they try to climb into a parent's bed for comfort.
A current study that is related to this topic followed 10 young adults aged 18 to 25. There are 5 males and 5 females who were separated at the border from their parents. The study looked at immigrants from Mexico that are now residing in the LA or the surrounding area. The demand for female service workers in the U.S. was one reason for migration, along with wanting better safety, escaping drug cartels, and giving their children the best educational experience. The prevalence of Mexican parent-child separation is between 75 and 85% of cases. Most research shows that separation and reunification phases of migration-related separation disrupts family relations and often results in conflict. Research has found that children and youth who are experiencing separation experience a range of psychosocial outcomes, impacting their overall well-being, educational outcomes, and social relations. There is a significant amount of family conflict at reunification, because parents oftentimes get remarried and they are beginning to start new families that involve half siblings now. So, the female children are required to take care of their half siblings after school, and they're also required to have a part time job to provide income for their families, which adds more stress onto the female children. While the male children are often left with freedom to hang out with their friends and not provide for their family. Both male and female children struggle and are often held back when starting school in America due to language barriers. Oftentimes, public schools are not bilingual, and the children struggle to understand what they are being taught. There is also a lack of school resources such as social workers, school counselors, and school tutors. Parents are also not able to help out with school because they also do not speak English, and the parents are too busy with work. Female children overall do better because they form peer support systems at school and at work, which provide a sense of belonging and guidance when their parents are at work. While male children lack these support systems because their parents do not monitor who they spend time with and they have social freedom, which allows males to look for other families to create bonds with, which typically are gang related.
Who were the social work reformers who called for and organized support for the issue consistent with social work values and ethics? In the 1990s, the NASW, along with the Central American Resource Center, which was established in 1981 and incorporated in 82 to meet the needs of refugees fleeing a period of violence and strife in Central America. El Salvador, Nicaragua, and Guatemala all experienced civil wars during the 1980s and 1990s. Many Central Americans seeking refuge from the violence in their home countries fled to neighboring nations, including Mexico and the United States.
In the current time, the NASW is heavily involved, especially Will Francis, Alan Wedgenford, and Mel Wilson. They all have high roles in the NASW. And they also focus on the social work values and ethics by recognizing the value and worth of an individual, challenge social injustice, and recognize social importance of human relationships. And their primary goal is to help people in need and address social problems.
Consider your issue and discuss other societal factors. There's a large internal migration during the time period. They are coming here for jobs, to escape violence, escape drug cartels, better opportunities, and education. They are coming here legally and illegally, and they are all coming from Mexico, El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, and they are both economic immigrants and refugees. Was there any significant civil unrest during this time period? Yes, there was significant unrest during this time period, and there were no political assassinations during the 90s or 2018. There was not a huge backlash in the 1990s, but there was a major backlash in 2018 between the Trump administration and the Democrats for building a wall. There was no pay for government employees due to the government being shut down. Were there any books, plays, movies, entertainers that influenced the development of social policies during this time period? There was one movie in 2018 that's on the PBS website. It's about separated children at the border. It's an inside story of what happened to immigrant children separated from their parents at the border. The film explores the impact of Trump administration's zero tolerance policy and how both Trump and Obama dealt with minors at the border.
So there's a lot of celebrities who are against the border. Stephen King, Alyssa Milano, Chris Evans, Chelsea Handler, Rob Reiner, and Barbara Streisand are very vocal about it on their social media accounts.
There's a documentary called A Day Without a Mexican in 2004. 1/3 of the population of California are Latinos, Hispanics, and Mexicans. How would it change life for the state's other residents if this portion of the populace was suddenly not there? The filmmaker stated that it was their hope that lawmakers and moviegoers will recognize the valuable contributions made every day by Latinos. Were there any significant national security threats or issues during this time period? In 1992, there was the genocide in Bosnia and also the cult in Waco, Texas.
There was the Oklahoma City bombing of 1995, the Desert Storm that happened between 1990 and 1991. Some of the things that happened in 2018, 2019 were the war on Iraq that began in 2003 and is still going.
There's a House bill called the Help Separated Children Act, Protect Family Values at the Border Act, the House Bill Fair Day in Court for Kids Act 2018, the Department of Homeland Security, the drug cartel still, and we are also dealing with ISIS and other terrorist groups.
Moving to the present, consider your issue and discuss which political party is in control both in Congress and the White House. President Trump is a Republican. He is a real estate mogul, reality TV star. He's worth 3.1 billion. He owns hotels. He's had 3 wives. He has a degree in economics from the University of Pennsylvania. And due to his education deferment, he never did serve in the military. The Democrats control the Congress. It influences present bills because Congress can't agree. Government has been shut down because Congress would not agree on the Trump's wall. He said about immigration, we're going to build a great big wall to stop illegal immigration, to stop the gangs, the violence, and to stop the drugs from pouring into our communities.
Some of his major policy accomplishments are Elder Abuse Prevention, Department of Veterans Affairs Accountability and Whistleblower Protection Act, No Human Trafficking on Our Roads Act, Jobs for Our Heroes Act, Strengthening State and Local Cyber Crime Fighting Act, and Protect Our Children Act of 2017.
So some final thoughts were suggestions from the NASAW, and that was for the Trump administration to end the zero tolerance policy, find least restrictive alternative that utilize community resources as opposed to family detention center of family prisons, create reasonable timeline when parents will be reunified with their children, and the administration needs to comply with the court order to adhere to the Flores Agreement, which prohibits prolonged childhood detention. They also suggest that all staff at the border, including social workers, administrative staff, and Border Patrol agents, must receive trauma-informed training.
And thank you for watching.
Thank you.
Thank you.